Hi everyone, Nicholas Papidis here from sunny Cyprus and welcome to today's tutorial. Now, today I'm going to be talking about comparing lists in Excel. I'm going to be covering two particular scenarios. The first scenario is going to be all about comparing two lists. Say, for example, you've got a list of students enrolled at the school and a list of students you've enrolled for examinations, and these lists don't match. We want to find out which students have not been enrolled. That's just an example. The next scenario is going to be when we have two different sheets which have results. Think about doing testing of students in, let's say, a previous year, say 2016 is the example I'm going to have, and then I retested students in 2023. We want to compare these lists so we can see how they've improved or if they haven't improved. But during that course of the time of 2016 to 2023, new students have joined, some students have left. We want to find only the students that have been around for that period of time so we can compare those results. Now, that's a tricky scenario, and it does take a little bit of manipulating that data so we can just be left with those students and bring in the results from both spreadsheets. So let's get started with the first scenario. Okay, so here I am, I've got my workbook open and we can see I've got four spreadsheets here. I'm only going to be using list 1 and list 2 for this first scenario. And we can see in list 1, I've got 35 entries if we disregard this heading column at the heading row at the top. And in list 2, I've got 38 entries if we disregard, again, this first row at the top. So we can see I've got 3 entries more in here, but that doesn't mean that it's only 3 entries extra in list 2. It could be that I've got items in list 1 which don't exist in list 2, and vice versa. So what we want to do, we want to find all the unique entries inside both of these lists. So I'm going to, first of all, select all my data in list 2. I'm going to copy that data. Now, I could just put everything in a new sheet. I'm just going to use list 1. So I'm going to go over to list 1, click at the bottom and paste everything here. So now I've got the contents of both lists inside one sheet. Now, the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to use a unique identifier. So my unique identifier is my email address. And at the end of this scenario, I'm going to show you how you can make your own unique identifier if you want to, using the first name and last name. But I can't use the first name or the last name as it is because there's a very high chance that two people have got the same surname or two people have got the same first name. So if you've got a unique identifier in here, like a registration number, an ID number, an email address, that's fantastic. So I'm going to select all of the entries in here. And from here now, I'm going to go to the home ribbon. I'm going to go conditional formatting. I go to this first one, highlight cell rules, and I've got one here that says duplicate values. And this allows me to highlight all the items which are duplicates. So in other words, wherever it sees the same email address more than once, that's duplicate values, so it will highlight them. Or I can choose to look at all the unique entries, and that's all the ones that only exist in the list one time. And I could just leave that default red color. Okay. Now, I could also do this just to be complete. Some of you prefer to manage your own rules. So instead of using the predefined ones here, I can go to manage rules. I'm going to go to new rule. I'm going to choose here the one that says format only unique or duplicate values. I can choose whether it's duplicate or unique. I'm going to choose all the ones which are unique, and I'm going to format those with a green color, the fill color. And you could do other kinds of formatting, that's fine, but that will do for now. And there we go. So all the ones highlighted green are now unique. And very easily, I can now select all of this data, go to my data ribbon. I'm going to click on sort. From here, I'm going to sort by email. Now, notice here, I've got my data has headers, so it's not going to include the header row in the sorting. And it also gives me the headings here by the sort by. And I'm going to sort by cell color. And you can choose whether you want the ones with no color to be on top or the bottom. I'm just going to leave that like that. Click OK. And there you go. So all my unique entries now have got this green highlight. And I can very easily just select all of these entries here and delete them. Now, I'm going to just undo that sorting. So I'm just going to click on undo. There we go. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you how we can do exactly the same thing, but you create our own identifier. So if I'm just going to right click on column A, I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to call this a check column or identifier, whatever you want to call. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the surname and the first name at the same time. So I'm going to start off by saying equals. I want to include the surname, the full surname, and I'm going to concatenate that or link that with the first three letters of the first name. Why not the whole first name? Well, sometimes in lists, I found when you've got two different lists, sometimes first names are written a little bit differently. You might have a third name which comes into play. So instead of me having to figure out where the first name ends using text manipulation, I'm just going to take the first three letters. Now to do that, I'm going to use the function left. That actually reads from the left-hand side. So it's going to read from the left of this one here, B2, which is the first name, and it's going to read the first three characters. Okay, and there we go. Now, if you don't like these capital letters, you can just encase all of this in a lower command. That's going to, I'm going to put lower, that's going to make everything lowercase and just make sure everything is inside those brackets. There we go. And I can now copy that down. Now, if I do exactly the same thing as what I did over here with the email, so if I just do that very quickly, I'm going to use the setup here, home, conditional formatting. I'm going to use this one, and I want to choose all the unique. There we go, click on OK, and there we go. And if I sort this again, sort, so I'm going to go to data and sort. From here, I'm going to sort based on the check and click OK. You can see I've got exactly the same selection as the email. Okay, so essentially I will just get rid of all of these. These are duplicate, these exist in both lists. I'm just going to delete that. And now I've got a unique list of items which I need to check. Now, whether these are students which haven't been entered in exams, whether these are serial numbers which aren't accounted for, anything you want, there's my unique list. Okay, that's it for scenario number one. Let's go scenario number two. Okay, so let's look at scenario two. I'm going to be using this spreadsheet here, 2016 and 2023. Now, both of these spreadsheets here have got student names, their email address, and some results from test scores. And if we look at 2023, the same again, these are different types of tests. We've got students in here as well. So the idea is that students were tested in 2016 on certain topics. We got their results, and then they were tested again in 2023. But during that period of time, 2016 to 2023, some students have left, new students have come into the school. So I need to be able to find all the students that existed or exist in the 2016 list and in the 2023 list, and then I will be able to put their data together, and I will be able to compare results to see whether they've improved or not improved. Now, to do this, I need to make sure I have a unique identifier. In this case, I do. I've got my email address, and email address is unique. So if you've got something like a student ID number, an ID number, a government ID number, or anything like that, a registration number, that's perfect. If you don't, you can generate your own unique identifier using the student's surname and first name, like I showed you at the end of scenario one of this video. Now, I'm going to be using, the first thing I need to do is to find how many students in this list, 2023, actually exist in this list here. Now, to do this, I'm going to be using a function called XLOOKUP. If you haven't used the XLOOKUP or the VLOOKUP, you can also use. Look in my description below, and I've got a link to a tutorial which is going to teach you everything about lookup functions, lookup, HLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, the new XLOOKUP. And I've got another link in that description below, which is going to tell you everything about relative, absolute, and mixed references, because we're going to be looking at references as well. So the first step is I'm going to create a new column, and I'm going to call this here check. So I'm just going to reduce the height of this row. Doesn't matter if I can't see all of the titles there. Okay, now in this check bit, I'm going to expand this so you can actually see the formula I'm going to be using. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my XLOOKUP function. I'm going to find whether this email address exists in this list of email addresses here. And if it does, I want to return the email address. If it doesn't, I want to return the number 1. Now, you don't have to return the number 1. You can return whatever you like. I like using a 1 because I can use it in a sum function to see how many did not exist, or you can just use a character. That's fine. So once I've done this one, I want to be able to copy my formula down so I don't have to write the same formula again and again and again. And that's where the relative and absolute references come into play. So let's begin. I'm going to start off with equals. Let's just zoom that in a bit more. There we go. So I'm going to start off with equals. My function is going to be the XLOOKUP. And the value I'm going to be looking up, the lookup value we can see here, is going to be the email address. And I want to check if that email address exists in the list of 2016. So it's going to be from here. Let's get that out of the way. All the way down to the bottom here. I'm going to put a comma. Now, before I do that, as I'm going to be copying down for the other results, I don't want this selection of cells to be moving down. So I'm just going to, and this is where the absolute references come in. I'm going to select that, press F4. That's an absolute reference now, comma. And if it does find the match, I want it to return the answer from this array here. So instead of returning, usually with the XLOOKUP, you'll be looking up in one column and returning a value answer in another column. I just want to return the email address if it exists. And again, I'm going to make that an absolute reference, comma. Now, if it doesn't find the match, in other words, if there's an error, and that's what this thing here is saying here, then I'm going to return the number 1, comma. And the type of lookup that I'm going to do is an exact match. So I only want to return a value if it finds an exact match. And press enter. So there we go. This one here actually exists in the 2016 list. Now, because I used absolute references, I can just double click here on the cell and it will go and find all the ones that exist. And the ones that don't exist, it's giving me, you can see here, the number 1. So I know all of these don't exist. Okay, so that's perfect. Now I need to do the same thing for this one over here, because at the end of the day, I want to remove all these ones here that don't exist and only be left with the ones that do exist. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing on this side. I'm going to add another column, insert. I'm going to call that check. Just zoom that in a bit. And let's make that a bit bigger, like that. Okay, so the same thing as before, equals to XLOOKUP. I'm going to check this email address, comma. I'm going to be checking now in this selection here on this sheet. Again, I'm going to use absolute references. So I'm going to press on F4, comma. And again, I want to get the results from this same array. So I want to return the email address if it finds a match. Again, I don't want that moving, so I'm going to press F4 again. And then comma, I'm going to return a 1 if it doesn't find something. And I want an exact match. So it's only going to return something if it finds a match. Otherwise, it returns a 1, and it has to be an exact match. So press enter, and I'm going to copy that down as well. Okay, so the next step is I need to sort my data so that I can then delete anything which shouldn't be there. So let's start from the 2023 one. So I'm going to go and select all of this. I'm going to go to data. There already, sort. So I'm going to sort based on the check and click OK. And now you can see all of these here. These don't exist in the 2016 list. So I can just right click, delete that. I can now go to my 2016 list, do exactly the same thing, select all of this data here. Again, I'm going to sort based on the check, click OK, and I'm going to delete these ones here. So now I've got the same amount of data on one side as I do on the other. And if I just want to check that, I'm just going to do a simple count function here. Why don't I just put this at the top? Equals to count A. That's going to count any cells that have got anything inside, which is going to be all of these. So I've got 24 results. And if I go to the 23 one, equals to count A, and we'll just check that all of these exist. So I've got 24 results. So that's good. I can get rid of that now. That was just a little checksum there, so I can make sure I've got the same amount of entries. All right, great. So now that I've got these, I need to sort them according to sort on my email, so they're all listed on both lists exactly the same way, and that way I can bring my data together. So again, I'm going to select all of this. I could have done this in one go before. Select all of that, go to sort on the check, because that's the email address. I could actually do it on the email as well, but leave it on check A to Z, click OK. There we go. And go to 2023 as well. Actually, it's already sorted, but just to make sure. Okay, sort, check, cell values A to Z. There we go. So now these should be in exactly the same order. And I can see I've got Mary on the top on this list, and I've got Mary on the top on this list, and then I've got Jason at the bottom and Jason at the bottom. So that looks good. Okay, that's it. I've now got two lists which I can compare. They look very different. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new list, a new spreadsheet. I'm going to put that over here. And now I can just bring in data. So let's have a look. If I just take first name and last name, you can bring the email as well. Let's just copy that over, put that in here. And now I can very easily, let's add a row up here as well. So I'm just going to put first, last, and email. There we go. And now what I can do is I can go get the columns that I want for each side. So if I get this data here, Control C, and bring that over here. Oops, undo. Let's go back. Did I select? Oh, I didn't select the title. There we go. So Control C, is the title selected? Yes. And I can put that there. Perfect. And then I can go get information from 2023, for example. Let's say I want to select, and in fact, let's take all of this data. Let's take all of this data. So I want to compare basically from the 2016, the standardized score there. I want to compare that with the 2023 results. That sounds reasonable. Okay, now if I want to, very easy, I'm going to use conditional formatting now, and I'm going to compare everything with this column here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to use conditional formatting to see whether this score on this side is actually bigger or lower than this one here, and that will give me a really good indication of whether they've improved or they haven't improved. Now, I'm not saying these results and these scores are correct and it's the correct way of doing it, or this data is accurate, but you're going to get the understanding that you can actually compare that value with other values across the board from different years. All right, so let's do that now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of this data. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go Conditional Formatting. I'm going to create my own rule. Okay, so I'm going to do a new rule, and I'm going to use my formula. I'm going to create my own formula, and the formula is going to be this. Now, again, in the description, I'm going to add a link to a third tutorial. That tutorial is all about conditional formatting. Okay, so if you want to learn more about conditional formatting, there's a video link at the bottom in the description. So I'm going to create my own formula this time, and my formula is going to be, and if you know about conditional formatting, because I've selected all of these cells, I need to work as if I'm looking at only the first one. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to take this value here. Now you can see it's made that an absolute reference. I don't want it absolute because I want this cell to move over to the right. So I want that letter E to be able to change, and it's going to copy downwards as well. So I want the letter 2 to change as well. So I'm just going to select that and just make that a relative reference using F4, toggle switch. So I'm saying that E2 is bigger than, well, actually, I'm going to say less than, is less than whatever's inside D2. Okay, so if that value here inside E2 is less than what's inside this test score here that I've got from 2016, then I want it highlighted. Now, this one, as it goes across, I don't want this value here to be going across the letters. So again, this is going to be a mixed reference. I'm going to select that. I'm going to press F4. I want to lock the D, but I want to leave the 2 because as I go downwards, I want it to be checking these ones here going downwards. So then I'm going to format, and I'm going to say if it is less than, it's going to be, I don't know, this orangey color here. Click OK, OK, and OK, and look at that. Now I can see very easily, comparing these results here, I can see which student has gone below the base score and on which tests in 2023, and vice versa, which students have gone above 6 years later. Okay, I hope that's been interesting. I hope you've learned something new. As I said, all the formulas and the conditional formatting, I've got links in the description below, so you can, if you don't know about conditional formatting, you don't know about relative absolute references or the XLOOKUP function, you've got links below. Go have a look at those videos. And yeah, I hope this really helps you out. I hope you found this useful. And if you did, by all means, you know the drill. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.